and gentlemen, I'd like to call the regular monthly meeting of the McCandless Township to order. We'll stand for the call to order for the invocation. If you wish, you may stand for the invocation by Councilman Zachary and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us open our hearts to the welfare of all people in our community by respecting the inherent dignity and worth of each person, and realize our differences of race, religion, and party affiliation are merely superficial. May we, in order to achieve the greatest good of the citizens of McCandless, it is important for us to maintain an open mind and honor and respect the human rights of each other. We should consider the benefit provided by differing perspectives and be willing to question assumptions that serve only to obstruct our path to progress. Rather than bowing our heads and closing our eyes in indifference, we should open our eyes widely to face the realities that confront us without losing sight of our ideas of what we can achieve. Through the prudent use of reason and compassion, we can ensure the success of this great town. May we recognize the proven potential within ourselves and in each other by overcoming any challenges that we face.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Announcements. We have some Boy Scouts in here. Would you please stand? Lane Shea of Troop 171, and Ian Gall, Troop 171, St. John Newman's Church. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
If you have any questions, be sure to ask us after the meeting. Okay? The other announcements, we remember that Community Day is September 9th on Saturday. We'll have the parade at 12:30. 12:15. And we'll have the fireworks probably at 9 o'clock when it starts.
Scheduled at 9.
That's what we're scheduled to do. Another announcement, Councilman McKim.
There are two resolutions related to the Ambulance Authority. The first is a resolution recognizing Tim Butler for 40 years of service as a member of the McCandless Franklin Park Ambulance Authority and his continued service since the inception of the authority in January of 1977. Let me read it in its...
Is that a motion, sir?
What's a resolution?
Second.
Second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Do you have the...
You're going to read it?
Well, do you have the...
I have a copy for you right here.
No, I mean, I thought you had to frame something out here.
You.
Ah, there you go. Okay. And
He's getting framed.
Tim can come up to the,
that's Mr. Butler.
Would you like to read it, sir?
I am going to read it. Where's Mr. Butler, though? I wanted to read it. Would you like to come forward, please? I guess I should show you. Yeah. That's what I'll do. Okay. Let's go by the podium. Whereas in 2017, the McCandless Franklin Park Ambulance Authority is celebrating, just a second. There's two resolutions. I understand what I just did. I got one ahead of me here. Okay, now let's begin again. Whereas Tim Butler started his long and emergency medical service career as a volunteer And whereas Tim Butler was one of the first to train in Pasadena Hospital's paramedic certification program, and whereas Tim became an EMS supervisor in 1981, then moved to the authority's assistant director in 1988, and in 2004 advanced to deputy director. Whereas Tim Butler diligently continues to apply his analytical and technological skills, ever loyal and dedicated, with an ear to the ground to hear what's new and what's going on around him. And whereas Tim recently received the Outstanding Board Member Service Award from the Allegheny County EMS and is the only two-time recipient of that award. Now be it resolved, and it is hereby resolved, the Town Council of the Town of McCandless hereby extends its great appreciation to Tim Butler for his 40 years of dedicated service to the McCandless Franklin Park Ambulance Authority and the residents of the Town of McCandless and other communities served by the authority, and the recognition of his ongoing contributions to the emergency medical service. This motion is hereby made by me, and it's been seconded by, who seconded that? Ralph Ledon, thank you, Ralph. And let me present this nicely framed resolution to Mr. Butler. Here you are. Congratulations, sir. Okay, thank you very much. Why don't you wait up here and I'll read the one for the whole ambulance authority. There's another resolution, resolution number 12, recognizing the McCandless Franklin Park Ambulance Authority for providing 40 years of outstanding service to the town of McCandless and area communities and its visitors.
Steve, would you want to come forward?
Anyone else from the authority here? Is there anyone else from the authority here? Jerry?
Anyone else?
Any other board member?
Any board members who want to come up with Steve?
Please.
Hey, Steve, how you doing?
Pretty soon? There they are. Well, you got the whole board here.
Hi, look, okay, hi. Dr. Santoro? Mark, how you doing? Okay,
You're going to read the motion
in the
first.
form of, I'm reading the motion, I'm about to read the motion. Whereas in 2017, the McCandless Franklin Park Ambulance Authority is celebrating its 40th anniversary as our community emergency medical service provider. And whereas in cooperation with the town of McCandless, Highlands Volunteer Fire Company, and a group of concerned residents from the town of McCandless and Franklin Park Borough, the concept of a local pre-hospital provider was formed. In January of 1977, McCandless Franklin Park Ambulance Authority was officially formed as a nonprofit municipal authority. And whereas in March of 1979, 3 additional communities of the borough of Bradford Woods, Marshall Township, and Pine Township were added to the authority's service area. Whereas this has resulted in all 5 communities receiving the same prompt, professional, and effective pre-hospital care. Now be it resolved, and it is hereby resolved, that the town of McCandless, a founding member of the McCandless Franklin Park Ambulance Authority, hereby extends its gratitude and deep appreciation for the ongoing superb emergency medical service provided by the authority during its first 40 years of operation, and further extends its wishes for such continued stalwart response to the pre-hospital medical needs of our residents and visitors. Was that motion seconded?
Second.
Motion is second.
Thank you.
So moved, seconded by Ralph. All
We-
those
we
in
have here-
favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
want the, why don't you get a nice shot of the board members here? Going from left to right here, Mark Matera, Dr. Santoro, geez, yeah, Murtaugh, yeah. Don Huber, Cindy Potter, and the boss. Okay. Did you want to add anything?
No, I would just like to thank Town Council for, first of all, recognizing Tim and recognizing the authority. We are honored and privileged to serve the residents of McCandless, Franklin Park Borough, Pine Township, Marshall Township, and the Borough of Bradford Woods. And I can tell you I am extremely proud of the folks, the medical professionals that we have to take care of all of our residents. So thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Lady and gentlemen. Okay? That's it.
Moving right along, item number 5.
Mr. President, move to approve the minutes of council's regular business meeting of July 17, 2017, and council's reconvened regular business meeting of August 7, 2017, as submitted to each member of council.
Second.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. All those, any discussion?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Our town currently uses summary minutes, and while pertaining to the town business, they are very informative and facilitate communication with citizens. However, this format of summary minutes for comments for personal comments are another issue. When an individual summarizes others' communication, it is possible to misinterpret the intended meaning and content. It is also impossible to separate oneself from personal bias, regardless of how hard we try. I compared the public comment section of the minutes to the recorded meeting. Overall, they were fairly representative of events, but there were many that I thought were important comments and questions that were omitted. One statement in the minutes I could not find in the recording at all. I'm requesting council reject the minutes from July 17th, have them reformatted to be resubmitted at September's business meeting, and for all ongoing minutes to follow the format and Robert's Rules of Order for individual's name and subject of their testimony only being in the minutes. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
I'm also against having certain items in the town council's minutes that may unnecessarily hurt a person's reputation, whether they are or not, or are true or not. If we record something about a person, even though it may be true, we have to examine our motives for recording it. Otherwise, we may find ourselves guilty of detraction. As we discussed in the agenda review meeting, the minutes, in my opinion, contain such a comment. Therefore, I'm voting against them.
Any other discussion?
Mr. President, I think, of course, we had a discussion about this topic on Monday, our prior meeting. It wasn't a regular meeting, and I thought it was thoroughly discussed. In my view, the facts and assertions, if you call them that, they're accurate. The minutes are accurate. If we're going to change the way we're doing it, and there was discussion about that, I'm not lodging in advance an objection to that, although it's going to result in a much less fulsome set of minutes. And I would remind council that we've had discussions in the recent past about the need to be more transparent and to include, even for the minutes and the committee minutes, to have more information in there so that our residents can look at them and see what's going on. I think to make them shorter, which is the effect of having the Robert's Rules of Orders apply. They really parse them down tremendously. So, but for that reason, I don't think we should be changing them, certainly not at this meeting. And I'm for approving the minutes as presented. Thank you, sir.
I agree.
I would have agreed if it wouldn't be things like when a particular person's opponent had said something and done something in the exact same fashion. That was never included in the minutes from past meetings. It seems to me that this name was specifically added more out of a political stance than an actual reason to add the name.
Okay, I don't want to extensively debate that. That's not my place to do that, Steve. But remember, these were remarks made by the speaker, not by us. And he clearly those are a fair summary of what he said. They're almost verbatim.
Right, but this has never happened in the past. I've gone over as many minutes as I could scan over, and I couldn't find this instance happening at all since I've been on town council.
Okay.
Well,
Well, as far as the transparency aspect, remember, these meetings are now televised. I mean, they're recorded by tape and everything. So that wasn't the case in the past. Someone would just record the minutes.
seems to me that we're going 180 degrees backwards.
And
Everybody wants
Backwards.
transparency.
Well, it's more transparent in televising.
But I don't understand, there were other names mentioned in those minutes, and nobody's objecting to those names.
Other names mentioned as people that spoke.
Right.
That's all.
Mr. President, I call the question.
Question, we're voting on Councilwoman Zachary's amendment. She made a motion.
She made a comment, not a motion.
There's already a motion on the floor. I couldn't make another motion.
All right,
Again, I'm calling the question on the
Okay.
basic motion.
all those in favor of approving the minutes as written signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Roll call.
Ward 1,
Nay.
Ward 2,
Aye.
Ward 3,
Nay.
Ward 4,
Aye.
Ward 5,
Nay.
Ward 6,
Aye.
Ward 7.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, the vote was 4 in favor, 3 against. The motion passes.
And the minutes are approved as written.
Mr. President, that's all I have at this moment.
All right, moving right along to the agenda, the Finance Committee.
Mr. Chairman, I move to ratify check listing number 8 dated July 6, 2017 through August 16, 2017, totaling $1,950,113.29 as submitted to each member of council and as posted on the bulletin board and town website.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion or question on any member on council? Anybody in the audience? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt resolution number 13 of the 2017 series, a resolution authorizing the temporary investment of the town funds by the town manager and the assistant town manager, and to make transfers of said deposited funds from and to accounts only in the name of and owned by the town of McCandless.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion on that?
This has been reviewed at the Finance Committee meeting.
Yes, this was all reviewed at the Finance Committee, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions from anyone in the audience? Call for a question on the motion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt resolution number 14 of the 2017 series, a resolution establishing a financial development and promotional committee to support the mission of the McCandless Northern Allegheny Heritage Center in accordance with the core documents governing the operation of the Heritage Center.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Any questions?
Yes, I actually have a question. There were several three council members met together and sat down and kind of worked these out with our town manager. And there were several, Gavin, one of our solicitors, looked over this and made a lot of changes. And so I had a couple of questions, and I guess this is for the solicitor, about some things that were changed and why something I would like to have changed back, and then a question about something else. On the second whereas at the beginning of the resolution, it says the intended appointment of the advisory and intends to appoint. I would like to have the and intends to appoint change to will immediately post advertisements for members upon adoption of this resolution, so we can just move forward with it.
Yeah, I think the reason that was put in there, Councilwoman, was the appointment hasn't been made yet. So I think you intend to do it, and you have the power to do it, and you will do it. I don't think that precludes you from doing it. We can change it. I don't think there's any harm in changing it.
Well, you
but-
usually don't put action items in whereas clauses.
Yeah, that's true, too.
You can frame it in a way that you're being informative. Whereas clauses are sort of the why are we doing this? And the now there it be it resolved section is the action items, 1 through, in this case, 1 through, I think we have 17. So if you want to frame it in a way that, and would like to, maybe you say that in sort of a conditional way.
Can we add it to number 1 then? And it says that appointment or advertisements will be immediately posted on adoption of this first business working day, immediately after the resolution is adopted, something like that.
Isn't this covered under the appointment policy?
Well, and then that's my other, that's
Yes, it
actually
is.
the other thing, is that it says down here, accordance with the appointment policy unless otherwise approved by the majority of council. So it would be covered under the appointment policy, except now there's a clause in there that says that we don't have to do that because the appointment policy doesn't have to be followed here.
Well, no, I think it has to be followed, but council can change that policy if it deems it appropriate. I think in a case like this, what I've seen, you may want to appoint experts of some sort to something like this. An expert in museums, an expert in finance, it would be outside the normal scope. And you may not want to interview a number of people for those specialized items. But other than those specialized items, council would follow the appointment policy unless you make an exception for some reason. So I think it gives council more flexibility. You don't have to do anything if council doesn't approve it.
Those were two changes that I would like to see made in this.
Mr. Chairman, if we could incorporate Councilmember Zachary's intent, it would be either under that second action item, because you're talking about the appointment policy being enacted immediately. Maybe we should add that there. If we could take a moment and try to, probably only take a couple of words, we can get this going then. With said, how about if after, put a comma after town council in number 2, with the highlighted area where it says majority of town council, with the advertisement.
Members shall be elected according to Town of McCandless appointment policy upon adoption of this resolution.
Where are you inserting, ma'am?
Number 2.
Members shall be
With
selected in,
After the yellow?
You would take out unless otherwise appointed by the majority council, and then put a comment after appointed policy, and then put upon adoption of this resolution.
Now, Mr. Reese was suggesting keeping that in case one council wanted to deviate from the policy, for example, having experts. So, and just in case there's some good reason.
We wouldn't want an expert to take the place of a citizen, though. We could have them additionally come on.
That would be up to,
It's up to council,
up
I
to
think.
I don't
right.
think we would want to take a place of a citizen.
But I think you don't have to do it. I think this just gives you that possibility. Because otherwise, if you change it, you're going to have to propose an amendment to the appointment policy.
It took us almost 8 months to get this far. I my goal is it not to take another 8 months before this gets put on the website and we start interviewing and it starts going into place. That's my goal. However we can achieve that, I'm fine with that. But that's why I'm just trying to get a timeline that just says intends at sometime in the future. It means sooner than later.
Council would have to vote to say, well, we don't want to follow the appointment policy in this regard. That means the council would have to make a decision. So that wouldn't stand in the way of, if we put a comma after the word council and say upon adoption of the resolution. I think that's all you have to add. Bill Reese?
Yeah, I agree.
Upon adoption of this resolution, and then off we go. It gets posted tomorrow.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Make the,
Ask the solicitor if there's a reason to have an amendment to the
Well, I think-
motion, or is it
I
simple
think-
enough?
I think it is an amendment, so I think we
You
should.
need a vote.
Yeah.
Ms. Zachary would have make
you
a
know, to
motion
make
to
the motion to make.
amendment is so stated.
The amendment is so stated. Do I need to read it
Second.
over?
Second by Mr.
Second.
Mertz.
Any other discussion?
This vote is on the amendment.
Amendment, to add the
Amendment,
words,
the
upon
amendment.
adoption of this resolution, after the words town council, in the next to the last sentence of item 2 in the resolution. That's the motion.
Any question, any other discussion on that?
I'm sorry, what number paragraph is that?
Paragraph
Paragraph 2.
2.
2.
Add the words after town council, comma, upon adoption of this resolution.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, everybody has
Well,
that?
I just have one further question. In this discussion, does that mean that unless otherwise approved by the majority of council, is that included in the nomination procedures that's been adopted already?
It is not.
No.
Okay, so
No.
I guess I'd say, why is that even in there? I don't. What
Bill
is?
Reese has already spoken.
Well, I understand that, but
I agree.
but we're not voting. As soon as we vote, that provision's meaningless unless someone were to suggest an addition should be made, right?
Well, going forward, you could change it.
Well, that's what I mean. But tonight, it would be meaningless tonight.
I mean, if you don't intend to change it tonight, it doesn't matter, but this is the governing resolution for this body,
Well,
so.
but once we vote, assuming this passes, isn't that the end of the
Well,
issue?
6 months from now, someone can come in and you could say, I want to appoint an expert to do something. This gives you the flexibility to do that without it changing the appointment policy. I mean, it's up to council whether they want to do it. It's not a legal requirement. or anything.
Council, I guess I'm just confused, and I apologize. I don't want to extend this, but unless otherwise approved by a majority of town council, is that intended to be a permanent change, or is that just?
Yes.
And what would you do about the 7 members if you put somebody else on?
Yeah, it doesn't work.
This committee is 7 members,
Right.
am I right?
Yes.
So
Yes, one from
if you
each,
put
yeah.
somebody else on there, that's an 8th member.
Okay, but are we voting
Or
on
do
this?
you do away with,
I'm sorry, go ahead, please go ahead.
or do you say somebody can't be on there because you're gonna put an expert on?
Yeah, I'm not suggesting you do that. I'm just saying this gives council flexibility to make changes in the future if they want to. This is kind of a unique committee that you may want to call on experts. I mean, we had experts coming in with expertise in museums at the beginning. So you don't have to do it, but that's what.
But
it
if
would
we do
accomplish.
it, we're changing the nomination procedure, is that what you're saying?
Only for this committee.
On an optional basis.
Well,
Yeah.
Only for this committee tonight? or
That's
the
the
committee?
only resolution we have that would say.
I understand, but does that globally for the committee now and in the future?
This committee now and in the future.
Okay.
No other committee.
But it's not a necessary change to effectuate anything we're trying to do tonight.
It is not.
Then I think we shouldn't change it. I would just leave it like it is and vote as a person regards as appropriate.
You mean leave it in as it's drafted, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't change the nomination procedure just because we're here tonight talking about it. I mean, I think that we gave a lot of consideration to the procedure, and there were good reasons why the verbiage says what it says. And it doesn't sound like that those changes, that the language has any real bearing or applicability to what's going for any vote tonight, though.
So do you want this in or out, unless otherwise approved by majority of town
I
council?
would say in, Greg, because that's what it was when we walked in here.
We were leaving it in.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're not taking it out.
Ms. Zachary's amendment was adding the words upon adoption of this resolution, Mr. Chairman.
to the end of the sentence.
Isn't
We
that,
already
Kim, that's all you
put
want
that as a
in?
motion.
Right?
And leaving, there's no change to the language we were just discussing.
Right.
Right, this is an addition to this
Okay.
language.
And her, Ms.
Right.
Zachary's
Yeah, those few
language
words.
was said what again?
Upon adoption of this resolution.
Okay.
That's what we're voting on, that
I
addition
understand.
first.
Thank you very much. Yes, I understand.
All right, any other questions about the addition, only the addition? All those in favor of the addition indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, now we move back to the main resolution. All those in favor of the main resolution indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. That takes care of that document. Did we work on that 8 months?
From the beginning of my suggestion, that's how long it took to get this passed.
Zoning Committee.
Okay, Mr. President, move to approve the preliminary and final subdivision application, parent lot line revision of RAH Associates for property located at 9983 and 9987 Perry Highway, which is on the eastern side of Route 19, Pine Creek Hill, heading toward Wexford, as per service number 6613, pages 1-2, prepared by Shoup Engineering, Inc., dated June 14th, 2017, revised August 4th, 2017.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Bruce, do you have any, what's the latest revision?
There were two revisions of this plan. They were actually presented to the zoning committee. Revision number one is that there has to be a mathematical closure to show that the property closes when they re-subdivide it. So that took place. And the second item was, it appeared that they were going to build a new detention facility. That wasn't the case. It was, all this is doing is moving a lot line. The detention facility is in place. So all that wording was clarified on the plan to show that it is a proposed change to the easement. So they clarified that it's an existing pond. Those were the two changes.
Mr. Betty, was this the one that the court intervened way, way back and setting up this lot as it was?
Yes, the court didn't give the town the opportunity to comment on it, as I understand. Didn't give the town the opportunity to comment on the plan as it was presented. So it wasn't built entirely to town specifications, town requirements at the time.
And that court ruling occurred approximately when, in the early to mid-'80s?
I'm not sure of the exact time, 85.
85? Okay, thank you.
Right in the middle.
Right, that's pretty close.
Any other comments? The motion is made and seconded. Anyone in the audience have anything to comment? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. President, nothing further for the zoning committee?
Moving on to Public Safety Committee.
Mr. Chairman, move to authorize the establishment of a K-9 unit for the McCandless Police Department, subject to completion of K-9 unit operating procedures.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any Any comment on that? Question?
This has been discussed, I think, quite at length, courtesy of Chief DeSanti, Sergeant Madden, and their colleagues who already work as K-9 units, and also with the explanation of the subject matter by the chief that indicates that this is definitely would be a benefit to the department, especially in the area of a K-9 dog seeking out possible illicit drug activity.
Any comment from anyone? Any questions?
I just have one quick comment. We have Chief DeSantis here, and the gentleman to his right is Sergeant Madden, and he has a keen interest in working with animals and has volunteered to be selected. I don't know whether it's formal. I don't think anything formal has been done yet, but he would like to be a handler for the dog when this is all, assuming this is all prepared, approved rather. And thanks for your volunteering.
Ready for a question on the motion?
Wait, you didn't ask the audience.
I did.
I thought I saw a hand go up.
Comment?
Comment from anyone in the audience? You must
Hello.
not have heard me.
It's my knee. My name's Debbie Sagan, and I think this is a wonderful step forward in the town. Thank you very much for considering this. I've worked with K-9 units before in other instances, and I think it'll be a benefit to the town. My only question is has this been budgeted for? I'm just curious, are grants being sought, or is that the
We
I
have
see a
grants
head
being
going,
sought.
yes.
There was not budgeted for, but we can work it out.
And I can help with that. I just, I get notifications from the state, from the Pennsylvania Council of Crime and Delinquency, and I know that there are grants available through that agency. So if I can be of any support, I'd be glad to do that.
If I may, just a little bit more detail to follow up on Mr. Mertz's comment that there's the initial startup cost, there's a gap of about $9,700. Possibly that most of that will get covered by a district. This was discussed during our agenda review meeting last week.
Okay,
The
sorry.
district attorney since it's not cast in stone, but it's still an offer that would have to be ratified by his office of a $7,000 grant toward the remaining $9,700 that would be that we'd have to pay for, leaving about $2,700. So that would be a pretty small gap for us to cover.
Okay, thank you very much.
Not only that, Chief DeSanti has indicated that there are other individuals, groups, and corporations that are very much interested in having a K-9 unit deployed here in the township and are willing to support both monetarily, equipment, food for the dog, et cetera. So actually, when you come to the bottom line, there should be minimal expense for this particular operation, especially given the grants possible and the indications from DA Zapalas as to his financial support. Thank you.
Any other comments? Hearing none, we'll vote on the motion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Mr. President, that's all I have for public safety.
Recreation Committee. Public Works.
Mr. President, I move to award a contract to Insight Pipe based on bids received by the North Hills Council of Governments, NHCOG, for cured in-place pipelining services, Contract B, under its 2017-2018 sanitary sewer rehabilitation contract specifications, effective October 1st, 2017 through September 30th, 2018.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
If I may, there was a question Councilmember Zachary asked that was a bit of a mystery as to why my report said that the cost was lower, and actually they are. The COG engineer, I contacted the COG director, and he checked with the COG engineer, and he had compared the second bid from last year to the numbers, which were higher numbers, so that ends that mystery, so the numbers are lower. The cost this year is ranging from 4.5% to 12% lower than they were last year, which is a good deal.
Any other questions? Comment? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now we'll move to recreation.
Move to award a contract to McElroy Paving Company Incorporated, the lowest responsible bidder for proposed paving of the rehabilitation of the Wall Park tennis courts in the amount of $38,000.
Second.
Motion has been made and second. Any question, discussion on that motion? Any question from anyone in the audience?
I do have a question on this. I've been involved with the North Park, Friends of North Park, and they did paving over there of their tennis courts. And I just wondered, because there was some question as to the type of paving that was done. And we have tennis courts here, so maybe we already know that. Is it just asphalt, or is it a special surface? Does anybody know offhand?
Asphalt with a special surface over
It
top.
is, because it was questioned. After they did all that nice work at North Park, I felt so bad that somebody questioned that, so I just wondered, just for the record. Thank you.
Any other comments? Ready for a question on the motion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Move to award a contract to Lutz Tennis and Asphalt Company, the lowest responsible bidder for proposed color coating for the rehabilitation of the Wall Park tennis courts in the amount of $14,875.
Second.
Any questions or comments on that?
And that
Anyone?
is what covers the
The lining,
the coating on it that we just raised in a previous question.
ready for a question on the motion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Any public comments tonight? Anyone in the audience have a comment?
I just wanted to go back to the first motion, one of the first motions that was made this evening on the minutes from July 17th. I did send a letter to all council. Does anybody recall receiving that letter?
Yes?
Thank you very much. I didn't get any response, which I was very disheartened by that. And I watched the video. I wasn't able to be here that evening, and I couldn't sleep that night. And I'm a good sleeper. I don't have any problem sleeping. Because of the person that was presenting was, and I was very glad that I know Mr. McKim, we talked at the previous meeting of having the business person come and describe more about his business. We all had questions. I had questions. Other people on council had questions. And when the speaker started, I was very glad to have him there, and he seemed like he was going to speak about his business. And I think you know where I'm going with this if you read my letter. And he spoke about a particular individual in the town. That was not on the agenda. And I didn't understand how that was allowed to continue. We do have a resolution that I recall, and I don't know the number, but it was put into place to disallow insulting comments and scandalous comments. And I don't understand why, that's just my phone, why it was that particular line of comment was not stopped. Can somebody, I don't know this, I'm not even looking. This was my own thought. These are my own thoughts. I'm a bullying prevention trained consultant, and I've also done work in workplace bullying. And to me, That's what I saw that night. Can somebody, and I heard the discussion that came prior to this, and I appreciate that this was discussed in your previous meeting, because my request was that that be removed initially from the tape, the videotape, because when somebody bullies, it's repeated, and it's hurtful, and it's unwelcome. And to have that on the videotape, which I appreciate that we are showing the meetings. However, in that regard, I think that was out of place, because that person's name over and over again will be taken as allegations, as you said. These are allegations. They are not confirmed that the speaker was, the allegations that the speaker made. However, maybe it's better that this is viewed, and that this person will have, the person whose name was taken, Barb Richardson, in these allegations, people will be able to, she'll be able to answer that, and people will be able to discuss it. But my question still remains, why wasn't that stopped when we have that resolution?
May I speak to that?
Yes,
Now,
please.
remember, you have a 5-minute period here. You can
Oh,
talk.
okay, thanks for
But
the
you're-
reminder.
We're like you.
Go ahead.
You're getting your 5 minutes today.
Time recovered.
I was not, yeah, I understand. Debbie, I did get your letter. I thought it was a nice letter, because I had no unique involvement in the presentation. The gentleman, what's his last name, Sam? Sam Rosenberg. He appeared. No one told him what to say. He said what he said, and my understanding is it was largely. Not largely, it was accurate. I mean, the man spoke accurately. I don't think he went over the top in terms of attacking anyone. He spoke in defense of his business, which in fact was attacked. So I don't know. Maybe
No, he was not, he could not, we didn't ask him here to defend his business that was attacked. As my understanding was that he was invited to answer questions that had come up at, I don't know which meeting it was that we had in the little room, whether it was an agenda meeting or I lose track. I don't know how you guys keep track. But we had questions about the meeting, about the business. I do, and then at the very end, there was a political statement that I understand that this person is running for a council seat. What if I said something about one of you guys that are running, or somebody that's running for council right now, that I saw somebody out in the street doing something, and that would be an allegation.
You're saying he's running for a council seat?
No, he, at the end of his statement,
Okay.
Mr. Rosenberg made a statement about Mrs. Richards
Or she's running? That's right.
running for council, and he hoped that this wasn't a political ploy. That was nothing to do with his business. So my question is, why wasn't this stopped?
We just can't interrupt people, tell them to stop, as you know. But I would say, I think you've had a fair opportunity to express your view, and obviously there's a few people in the audience who agree with you, and I think it's all we can do tonight.
Well, I do think that there is an opportunity, and my point is also that I don't think this should ever happen again. And if someone has a podium, is invited to speak, and takes free reign of the podium, there should be a mechanism in place, and I believe that there is. Isn't there an ordinance, Toby or Mr. Kordick, that says we can't have scandalous, insulting speech, comments? Is that true?
You have to address the chairman.
Mr. Hoffman, is that true?
I don't know about it, that ordinance.
Well, I'd like that answered.
Resolution number 12,
If you look into me,
2000.
it's not an ordinance. The
Not an
chairman has
ordinance.
recognized me.
Thank you.
You should address your comment to him, please.
Mr. Chairman, did you recognize Mr.
He
Kordick?
did. I said he did.
Yes,
Thank
I
you very
did.
much for letting me know
So
that, Mr.
the-
Kordick.
So it's a resolution.
Okay. So we do have, in my answer to my question,
It's
there
a resolution
is.
that governs council's protocols.
Yes.
So there's a lot of detail in it.
Oh, I'm sure there is, but apparently that detail didn't come out that night.
Oh.
It wasn't why wasn't the detail of that ordinance applied, is my question.
He has freedom of speech. He had his freedom of speech, and he was finished speaking before anybody.
Freedom
even
of
thought about
speech,
it.
you can't yell fire in a theater. You know that
Pardon?
how that goes.
I don't
Well,
think he
because
yelled
there's, Well, I think he was making a lot of allegations to that effect.
I think he presented it in a positive manner.
Well,
President-
let's end on that
Mr.
note.
President,
Yes.
are you ending?
No,
You
not if I
You
still
had
have
5
time.
minutes
You're well over
comment.
5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Well, my point then is I will end, and Mr. McKim, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you if you want to make a point
No,
before
I was just going to
I
say,
close.
we're beyond the 5 minutes. We're
Okay.
pretty liberal with that.
Thank
But
you very
I think you
much.
fully explained your view very well, stated it very well, and I don't know if there's a whole lot more to be said at this point on that.
Well, I hope the council will take action so that this never occurs again. And I think I'm speaking to protect council as well as the town. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Yes, come up and identify yourself.
I'm Sister Mary Troutman. I'm a Sister of Divine Providence, 9000 Babcock Boulevard. And I'd also like to revisit the subject of the shooting range that's proposed for 200 feet from Babcock Boulevard. I have a list of questions, and I've written them down so that I don't get lost. First of all, how was this enterprise publicized? Since the July meeting of council, I have encountered more people who knew nothing about it. I understand there was a statement made that there was an article in the Trib. That was it. That obviously was not effective enough. So people are going to suffer from the effects of this without even knowing that it was going to happen. Shouldn't information about an enterprise of that nature, a shooting range, be shared individually and directly with those most affected? Neighbors living in the club and along Cumberland Road, churches and other worship sites, schools such as LaRoche College and Providence Heights Alpha School, whose principal is here this evening. This is a pre-K through 8 school, small children. Care facilities such as Sunrise and Passavant Hospital, with the Sisters of Divine Providence, most especially with Holy Trinity Church, the nearest neighbor. Imagine people coming to church on Sunday morning having to pass the leftovers of the late night revelers. When worshipers are frightened away, there's a serious question about a First Amendment violation of the right of free exercise. This was sanctioned by a government unit. What if this negatively affects property values of homeowners in the area? And one of the attendees at the July meeting specifically raised that question. If property values are affected, this is a Fifth Amendment taking, the government taking private property without just compensation. After all, it was a government unit that approved the project. Was this enterprise originally supposed to be located in another area, but instead was moved to McCandless? Why here? I'm speaking this evening for the Sisters of Divine Providence, some of whom are here this evening. More would be here, except that they're aging and in ill health, and they rarely go out. They even vote by absentee ballot. The sisters say, the Sisters of Divine Providence, 9000 Babcock Boulevard, support a consistent ethic of life. Therefore, we question location of a shooting range in a thickly populated area with educational institutions, healthcare institutions, places of worship, as well as stores and restaurants. We respectfully request that the shooting range be moved to an area far away from people. I would like to give you these papers for the record, signed by Sisters of Divine Providence. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Good evening. My name is Bill Kirk. I live at 198 Ridgeview Drive. And I'm speaking here because I respectfully disagree with the comments I've just heard. I was at all 3 of the previous meetings. I was at the first meeting where Ms. Richards spoke and brought in photos of guns, and without all the knowledge, in my opinion, mischaracterized them, mischaracterized the use of the facility, which I later heard testimony on at the second meeting. When I watched Mr. Rosenberg speak, I heard nothing scandalous or insulting in my opinion. I will add, he was nothing but respectful. I will further add that Ms. Richards was sitting in the front row, had every opportunity to speak, as I am right now, to clear the record. In fact, I hope that she'll speak tonight, if in fact it needs cleared. I don't believe it does. I will state again, I am pro-life and pro-responsible gun ownership. I do not see any difference between defending the rights and the life of the helpless unborn any more than protecting peace-loving people and their families with the responsible ownership of firearms. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
My name is Georgiana Leichhardt. I reside on Grubbs Road in Wexford. Barbara Richards, who cannot be here tonight because of minor surgery, asked me to read this statement for her. At the McCandless business meeting on July 17th, Mr. Samuel Rosenberg referred to me several times in derisive terms. Council allowed him to do so without any attempt to moderate his remarks or question their truthfulness. I attended the event after seeing a press release the night before. Do you usually put out a press release for a private event in an open field? I was never asked to leave. I spoke to an employee who told me the membership was like a gym membership. I exercised my right of free speech when KDKA TV asked to interview me. I spoke to whether the surrounding neighbors had been notified about this new business, and as we all know, they hadn't. At the beginning of August, I received a package in my Barbara Richards for Town Council post office box. Inside of this box was a spring-loaded device designed to explode the contents into the recipient's face, which it did. A cryptic message accompanied it. This attempt to scare and intimidate me is of grave concern and violates every citizen's right to run for office, unimpeded and not intimidated. It has been reported to both the McCandless Police and the United States Postal Inspection Office. Council members and anyone hearing this should know that when President Hoffman was told about this act of battery, his response was, "When you sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind." He also cited Walmart and political problems in McCandless as to why this attack was well-deserved. All this from a council president, an elected official of over 40 years. Is this the type of response we should expect from the president of McCandless Town Council? It's abhorrent to permit any candidate to be politically marginalized in a public forum. Violence and intimidation against any citizen should not be tolerated in this town or ever any governing body in the United States. The proceedings at last month's business meeting were a shocking display of retribution, with its ultimate goal as preventing me from winning a seat on town council. The community of McCandless deserves much better than what they have been given for over 40 years. Apparently, patronage of political partisanship is acceptable to this town council and will continue until new, principled representatives are elected. Thank you.
Yes. I told Mrs. Richards, she told me it was an explosive device. Now, what does an explosive device mean to me? When anybody tells you that explosive device, I said, were you hurt? And she said, no. And she didn't explain to me what it was until I checked it out. I called Mr. DeSanti, and he told me he sent the police up and gathered the device. And what it was a spring-loaded device, yes. I've seen them before. Kids used to bring them around with snakes in them, and they'd pull the brace and the snake comes out. I've seen them before. And I don't know who sent any device like that. Was certainly no one I knew, and we don't condone that kind of operation. And the same with some of the comments that people make. They're certainly not respectful, they're certainly not factual, and there have been remarks made all the time about these instances. They're not factual. Base them on facts, not on hearsay. As far as the comments that were made, I think we are following the rules of proper construction. I think that this building is no different than a lot of other buildings. Who knows what? I don't think that there's a danger in this operation. There's a danger in any kind of an operation. This one doesn't. It's going to be well constructed, well organized, and people use that as a means to practice, and some people like to fire weapons. So that's no problem. This man sees a profit in it, and he's going to do that, just like any other business. If he's not patronized, he'll go out of business. If he is patronized, his business will grow. I don't know which it's going to be, and he's taking a chance, and he's investing his money in this operation. And it's within the law. Mark that, within the law.
If I could clarify one thing about the spring-loaded device. It wasn't a snake inside. It wasn't a kid-type toy. These devices are mailed anonymously from all over the United States to people anonymously, which probably is being investigated, I'm sure, by the United States Postal Inspection Office, not as an individual case, but on a wide basis, because this type of behavior, it should not be done through the Postal Service.
You've already made your comment.
Anything can be loaded in there, not
So
just
we
snakes.
don't need more. Any other comments?
Rita Martin. I was at the planning meeting, to repeat myself, when the questions were asked about the business, the impacts business that was going to be put into McCandless Crossing. Those questions were not answered by you, so you invited the gentleman, the owner, to come and answer those questions. The issue was not for him to defend himself. It was to answer questions because citizens had serious questions. There were no standards in our town ordinances for indoor firing ranges. How could we rely on you to do much if specific sound, ventilation, and other requirements were not met? Because there are no specifications. We don't understand the specifications. And I still don't understand the specifications because they're not made by us, I guess, to a certain degree. And those were the questions we had. He did not have to defend himself. And he did accuse Barbara of asking questions of him that he felt were inappropriate in some way. I don't think so, and it wasn't Barbara. It was the citizens of McCandless's team of leadership. We wrote that document, those questions. We sent that to him. She just happened to post it on our Facebook page, and he then accused her of being the person responsible for it, and she was not. We all were. Thank you.
Any other comments? Hearing none, we now have candidate interviews for the McCandless Sanitary Authority. We'll take a 5-minute break before we do that.
The interviews are taking place in the caucus room next door.